Hello and welcome to the FEZ show. It is the 20th of August 2020 and we have a good show lined up today as we go through all the latest news in the world of Formula E, as Alexander Sims has moved to Mahindra in place of Jerome D'Ambrosio. The Gen 2 Evo car looks set to never race, so we'll talk about that, and we'll talk if the Formula E's qualifying format could work in Formula 1. But joining me on today's show is the one and only Jack Pickering and the lovely Edward Hunter. Morning, boys.
Good morning. Never been called that before, so what an honour. Lovely Edward Hunter. Okay.
Good morning, Jack. Yeah, I can't believe it's mid-August. That's absolutely insane. We've been doing these far too long now. Definitely.
Far too long, maybe, but we've got lots more to come because we've got 149 days to sort of fill some content for you Formula E lovelies to get us through till Santiago in January. But we've got to talk, Jack, the first piece of news, which Alexander Sims, we were talking about this if we'd seen his last race in Formula E or his last race at BMW, which officially now we have. But I was a bit surprised because Roger Griffiths in the press conference said, look, we haven't made a decision yet on our driver lineup. Clearly they had made a decision on their driver lineup because Sims wouldn't have been let go that quickly after Berlin. But what do you make of Sims obviously leaving BMW and him signing for Mahindra Racing for next season?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise, really. We obviously thought that that Sims would be out of BMW at the end of the season. That was, I think, the general consensus. But for him to join Mahindra Racing was a bit of a surprise. But I'm very happy that he is there, because he's a really good driver and deserves to be on the grid. And so I'm happy that he's found another place in Formula E, and I think Mahindra Racing is a good squad to be part of. Yes, it means that they're going for a completely different lineup to the season, to what they were, to what they had for the start of season 6. But because we're not sure whether Lynn's got the seat yet. Fingers crossed he does, because he did a spectacular job in Berlin. But it would mean an all British lineup at Mahindra as well. But yeah, it's it did come as a real surprise, but a pleasant surprise, and yeah, obviously we've as I just said, it means that there's going to be a different lineup because Jerome D'Ambrosio he's gone. But as soon as Sims was announced, Mahindra announced that Jerome was leaving the squad. I hope he's not leaving Formula E, because he's had a few fantastic seasons there, and he is a seriously good driver, and so there's quite a few spots on the grid now. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, that's what they said. They're like 8 out of the 22 things are confirmed. But my question for you, Ed, is: do you think the pressure cooker, like poor Sims, he never looked set for that seat? BMW never really showed any confidence in him. Like, going back into the back end of last season, being signed really late, not knowing and that pressure. And then even going into the season, despite winning the first couple of races, there was still that pressure on him to perform, that pressure on him that, if he made any mistakes or if he did anything, that, he could be the first one out the door effectively. And that pressure was always there. It never sort of left him, despite, winning races, getting that contract. That pressure didn't leave. But do you think at Mahindra, with their sort of family environment that we think with Dilbag Gill and so forth, and that they have at Mahindra, do you think that could be an area where, Sims could thrive off that?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting because I've seen other drivers at the Andretti team, before BMW joined, who were sort of given similar treatment where they would have a race or two where they struggled and suddenly they basically stopped talking about them in press releases, and it sounds like they've completely withdrawn all their support a little bit, and it's almost like they've become a one-car team. I remember when Robin Franz was doing well and Simone Di Silvestro was his team, I remember that happening. So I'm not so sure if that's necessarily a BMW thing or an Andretti thing. As for moving teams, I think there's definitely something in that he's not driving necessarily for the BMW corporation anymore. It's for Mahindra, which is this smaller team, I think it's fair to say. But the disadvantage of that is that it definitely seems like a step lower down the grid. And it's a big coup for Mahindra, of course, getting a race winner and someone with multiple pole positions. But especially given that Jerome is gone, which was the even bigger shock in my opinion. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for Sims. The big question now is whether he's going to be able to make it work, especially if he has Alexander Lin as his teammate. He may not have things all his own way.
No, but let's talk Jerome D'Ambrosio, Jack, very quickly, because he was, testing the Season 7 car. So when Alex Lynn came, Alex Lynn sat, sort of got used to the team, and Jerome D'Ambrosio, since Pascal Wehrlein's left, that, took on that responsibility. And, teams like stability, right? Teams like, okay, this driver has driven our Season 7 package. He understands the car. He's leading us forward. So I don't know if it's the decision Jerome has made, and we'll find out very soon, because if he is out of Formula E, maybe then we can find out if that was, he decided, what, I've had enough. I don't want to do anymore. I'm cool. I've had a nice 5-6 seasons in the series, or if he ends up at another team, then maybe there could be a different reason to the story. But I think it's a kind of a shock because, as I said, the teams like to stick with a driver that's sort of developed their car, moving the team forward, helping the team progress. And Jerome D'Ambrosio, to be honest with you, hasn't had an atrocious season. Good couple of Super Bowl appearances. Then it was streaky. I think streaky probably was the best way to put it, but I suppose Formula E promotes streaky drivers, because if you get qualifying wrong, all of a sudden you're at the back and you look like you're streaky, you look like you're hot one day and then bad the next day. But, if you look at his performances in Berlin overall, D'Ambrosio, he was fairly strong. So maybe a bit confusing, but maybe there's more to the story.
Yeah, Jerome was fantastic in Berlin. I think he came into Berlin with 3 points on the table, and he left with 19. He did a great job, and I think that is testament to Mahindra, who did bring a fantastic car to Berlin, and it did work extremely well. But it was a big shock when it was announced that because my first thought when I saw Alex Sims sign for Mahindra was Lynn's out of a seat again. But then immediately I read after Jerome's out. And so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that this was Jerome's decision, because I think Mahindra had probably Mahindra, because he tested the Season 7 car. They'd put a lot of faith in Jerome. Maybe he has got a deal that's too good to refuse. Maybe the thing is, if it is that, then I wouldn't think he'd be at Venturi, which I think is probably the most viable option at the moment. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Silly season has kicked off really well so far, and it's going to be an interesting silly season all the way up to Santiago.
Yeah, because we thought there was going to be a lot of, not a lot of changes. Like when we did this chat show, Jack, we talked about the teams and we put obviously Jerome. We didn't have that much movement, right? We didn't have, and it looks like there's going to be much more movement than we thought, which is really interesting. But let's talk BMW, unless it's a straight swap. Jerome D'Ambrosio is a straight swap going the other way. Who knows?
Oh, I sincerely doubt that. I honestly think that Jerome might actually be looking to retire, because he got married during the break to, if you remember, there was an F3 driver, Ferdinand Habsburg. He got married to his aunt, I believe, if I remember correctly. And the Habsburgs, many years ago, used to ruled the Holy Roman Empire in Europe. So I wonder if Jerome D'Ambrosio is going to make his bid to become the new Holy Roman Emperor, or to resurrect that empire. Seems unlikely, but I wouldn't put it past him.
No, I'd be, well, imagine the scenes. But
there have been some weird driver career changes. I know Robert Dornbos owns a
please let's not talk about Mr. Dornbos
in Amsterdam somewhere. But yeah, no, there are some really weird career changes. Jaime Alguersuari is a DJ now, so Roman Emperor's going to be right up there, definitely.
It definitely would be. Jerome D'Ambrosio is 34 years of age, so whether or not he wants to retire or not, that's actually quite young. He's actually got quite a few seasons, I would say, left in him, in the tank. So he might find a seat elsewhere. There are definitely other seats up for grabs. he's not going back to Dragon. Let's put it that way. That would be a huge shock. But let's talk BMW, right? Who is going to replace Alexander Sims? And early reports have come out saying Philipp Eng, Jack, and I'm like, okay, I said that in the last chat show. Like, who would if I was to go with a BMW driver, who would I pick? Possibly Philipp Eng, like the only one. But then we've seen now in Formula E that, yeah, okay, you go to an in-house driver, like we saw with Porsche with Giordmaina, and it didn't work. Okay, not saying that Philipp Eng won't work. René Rast came in, it worked. It worked beautifully for Audi. But we don't know. It's sort of that toss-up. You hope that it works, but you don't really find out till race one. Whereas in my opinion, and I've been saying this, Jack, you've got Oliver Turvey in that Neo, and everyone says he's the most underrated driver in Formula E. He's the one that deserves a top seat. And now a top seat has come along. And I'm surprised no one so far has gone, you know what, Oliver Turvey, this is his chance. If he wants to move, if he wants to get out of jail free card from Neo 333, this is it, because, what other chance is there?
Yeah, I mean, everyone should look out for Jack's feature tomorrow on why BMW should sign Oliver Turvey. But yes, it does. It would make sense for them to sign Ollie Turvey. I think I think he'd genuinely be a really good fit at BMW. Yeah, it's an interesting one, really. Because the thing is, last year when they lost Tony Dack to Diaz Cheetah, they signed Max Gunter from Dragon because he was doing really well. So they have form in terms of promoting drivers from not as good teams and then excelling well. Because obviously Max Gunter won 2 races this year, one in Santiago and one in Berlin as well. And actually this season he did only finish first or second or get no points, which is rather interesting. I think Sebastian Buemi's the only person who Sebastian Buemi in season 3 either won the race or got no points, and that's what lost in the championship. But yeah, it's an interesting one because you have someone who isn't originally a BMW driver, you'd kind of want to put a BMW driver in its place. But yes, as you say, we've seen Neil Liani before, who it just hasn't clicked. Well, it kind of clicked, but it was on the penultimate day of the season. But yeah, I know where BMW want to go with this, but honestly, if I were them, I'd get on the phone to Ollie Turvey immediately. And the thing is, we've said this about every team up and down the grid. As soon as an opening's come up, we've seen. We were saying about Virgin when Sam Bird left, but they got Nick Cassidy in, and we said it when Pascal left Mahindra, and now it's looking like it's going to be Alex Lynn alongside Alexander Sims. But yeah, it's going to be this is why I'm going to love silly season this year, because I really don't know what's about to happen. But if I were BMW, I would get on the phone to Ollie Turvey, see if he's about for next season.
Is it about marketability though, Ed? That's my question, because I think in a series now like Formula E and how competitive it is, I don't think new drivers are a risk. I think rookies are a risk. Obviously, you'll need rookies, right? You will always need rookies in a series, and you'll pray that they're good. Pascal Verlaine was probably a pure example of that. Rookie came in, blitzed the field, came in. Jean-Eric Van Okay, that was really early, but came in and hit the ground running.
Both ex-F1 drivers. Olaf Rast, of course. But Rast had done it before as well. So.
Well, he did one race, which probably you can't compare from Gen 1 to Gen 2. But at the same time, he's come in and it has worked. So there are examples of rookies working, but then we've seen Brendan Hartley come in. It didn't work very well. Nico Müller, we were expecting him to set the world alight. He was supposed to be Daniel App's replacement at Audi. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now, right? Because he hasn't really performed. And again, the obvious example was Neil Yarnid. As we said, drivers could come in thinking that they would do a good job, and it hasn't happened. So yes, you've got the marketability side of it, but and bring in a BMW driver, bring in your in-house driver for what you've got. But I don't think Formula E you can afford to do that anymore, because the difference, the gaps, it's such a competitive field. You need a driver that is going to race. That's going to be consistent on the pace from day one. And if you look on the grid at the moment, in a team that's not great at this precise moment in the Neo 333, with all respect, unless they get a DS powertrain going into season 6 or 7, whatever we are in now, and maybe they could be a strong team. But I think clearly for me, you've got to put Turvey, you've got to try and sign the best drivers, not just the driver that's in your program.
I just want to say on that before Ed comes in, if they wanted someone who was performing week in, week out, but they want to get someone from their program, they should have just kept Alexander Sims, and not gone for like Philippe Eng.
But was Alexander Sims performing week in and week out? That's my question.
He was at the start of the season, but Berlin
I don't think he was.
Well, that's a moot point, Pico, because Sims jumped before he was pushed out. In my opinion, that's what the whole move to Mahindra was about. That he didn't think he was going to be retained, and so that's why he started talks with Mahindra, in my opinion. And so, as for your original question, Jack, about marketability, it sort of from BMW's point of view, they have got a pretty big berth of in-house talent in DTM, for example, drivers that they've sort of brought up through the ranks. Like a good example that comes to my mind is not Philippe Eng, but actually Marco Wittmann, who won DTM for them as I think he maybe even won it as a rookie or in his second season or something a few years ago. He was this very promising young driver, Marco Wittmann, who impressed me a lot. So if it can't be Oliver Turvey, then could do worse than putting Wittmann in. But yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of I think sponsors would probably go for it, because Turvey has that sort of profession. He's a Cambridge Blue. He's got excellent technical feedback. He's not He's not too old, so that wouldn't be an issue in terms of marketing that. But I wonder if it's a problem with just Oliver Turvey. I don't want to say the term masochist, but he definitely seems to love turning down opportunities at bigger teams to stay at Neo or 333 Racing as it is now. And I wonder if maybe just that group of people, irrespective of how uncompetitive the car is, he just owes it too much to the group of people he's working with, where he sort of feels like, well, I've spent so many years now, I have to sort of make this pay out. It's almost like a kind of gambler's fallacy, where he just literally can't leave, no matter if he gets like Techeetah or whoever it is at his door offering him a world championship. It's like, nah, I've been here too long to give up now. I don't know. Yeah,
well, I don't know about that. Well, we'll see. It depends on what Turvey's state of mind is. When we spoke to Turvey, I thought, he sounded fed up. In all honesty, of what was happening at Neo, but when we think about that marketability, Ed, just very quickly, like in terms of, yes, okay, you can bring in your BMW driver. Yes, look, BMW, Marco Wittmann, whoever, right, ex-DTM champion, blah 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 blah, right? He's in our Formula E seat, great. But if he finishes P15, then that marketability
we don't know
is going to go
until we put them in the race, though, do we?
Yeah, but that's true. But that's why we're hypothesizing here, right? If he finishes 15th, right? And that marketability of putting that guy in the seat, like Neil Yarni for Porsche, is gone, right? That's not marketable anymore. Your driver's at the back of the field, we don't care about him anymore. We care about Andre Lotterer, right? And everything will go towards Andre Lotterer for Porsche because he's the one doing good. And it could be the same for BMW. Whereas, if you put Turvey in, and he starts, not BMW driver, but becomes a BMW driver, if he starts winning races, BMW are going to be pretty marketable in my opinion, because Oliver Turvey, Oliver Turvey, the new BMW Formula E champion maybe. And, wow, that's going to be pretty marketable.
Yeah, I think the thing from Turvey's point of view is if he signs a BMW contract, then there's going to be stipulations with that. And that was one of the reasons why the Costa left, is because they were leaving World Endurance, and it's like, well, basically, sorry, Antonio, you can't race World Endurance Championship anymore. And he's like, what? I like doing that. And so that's one of the reasons why he left BMW. So you can easily see that why a certain driver might not, for some drivers it's the opportunity of a lifetime. For other drivers, maybe they might want to think twice about it. And Oliver Turvey's on the older side. I think he might. It's definitely not the easiest decision in the world for him.
I suppose it depends on Jack what he wants to do, Turvey, in terms of, does he want to make Formula E his career path. This is the racing series I'm focusing on, right? And if that is, then BMW, well, if you want to focus on it and have some good last couple of races, and good couple of years, then yeah, BMW is the way to go. If he is thinking elsewhere, which I don't know if he is, but if he is thinking maybe I could race here or maybe I could race there, is BMW the right team to go to for that? I don't know.
I'd be surprised if Ollie Turvey wasn't thinking of making his career in Formula E, considering that he's had 5 seasons there and hasn't. Yes, he has done some work on the side, but his primary focus for the last few years has always been Formula E. So, if I was Ollie Turvey or his management, I'd get onto BMW and say, I'm happy to drive. But because I think Formula E is where Ollie Turvey's heart is, and so yeah, I think it would make sense. Yes, he's been in the Neo for a few years and he's been at the back, but he's shown in that Neo how good he really is. Santiago, when he got it into Superpole, he came across the line 8th in Diriyah before he got disqualified. And so yeah, I think and actually, had he not been disqualified that day, we would have had all teams scoring points over the course of the season. So it's actually a massive shame that Ollie Turvey was disqualified there.
Just one. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Pico. But one thing that's just occurred to me is that Oliver Turvey is, for 10 years now, been a test and development simulator driver for McLaren. So if he signs for BMW, is that going to clash with his existing McLaren contract? Because I couldn't see him wanting to break that very easily.
That's a good point.
At great length about how much he got out of the sim work with McLaren. So that's another stumbling block, I think.
It's a good point, but at the end of the day, you're just a sim and test driver for McLaren. You're never going to be in the F1 seat. You're never going to drive the F1 car. Yeah, okay, you might love the sim work. But
you never know. COVID. Oh no, they're using Stoffel, aren't they? They're using Stoffel as a reserve driver. Yeah. Nah.
He's never going to race for them.
Go BMW, mate.
Exactly. What's the harm? And maybe it would be like a separate contract. Maybe he'd just be the do some simulator sessions. It happens for some drivers. I suppose. Look at Pascal Wehrlein. He's Ferrari's. Pascal Wehrlein is Ferrari's simulator driver. But he's driving for Porsche.
I wonder if that's going to be the case for much longer now he's signed with Porsche.
I don't know, but to be fair, with Ferrari, I would try and stick with that Ferrari powertrain or whatever, or that Ferrari team.
Ferrari will still have Brendan Hartley though, so yeah.
Yeah,
it's possible.
Happy days. But let's move on because I think we've covered it quite well. Let's talk the Gen 2 Evo car because we released yesterday. There was a lot of confusion in the paddock, so we went hunting. We asked the question, and we got a response. And that response is that that the Gen 2 Evo car will not be going ahead. Ed, what were your thoughts on that? Are you happy that we're not going to see the Gen 2 Evo car? Sad, or do you think it was probably?
Well, you make it sound like, did you want Gen 2 Evo to fail? No, I didn't. It's a cost-saving thing, isn't it? It was the advantage. It looked nice and all the renders and stuff, but the advantage of bringing in the new bodywork was offset by the fact that it cost more than what it would have added, really. So it wouldn't really have been worth having it for just one season. Because Gen 2 Evo ended up getting delayed, that was the last thing we'd heard on it, and now Susie Walton, an interview view, basically confirmed that the teams had all agreed to scrap it, which you could sort of see coming, and so it was kind of inevitable when they had to delay it that it was probably going to end up being scrapped because they weren't going to delay Gen 3. So yeah, I'm a little sad that things couldn't work out. I do wonder if before the pandemic if any of them Gen 2 Evo chassis actually got built. What's going to happen to those now? But yeah, it was necessary. I think it was the right call, and I don't have a hugely strong emotion. I'm more sad than I am kind of happy or anything.
Yeah, the thing is, Jack, it was going to cost so it was 38,000 for one set, but their team said that they probably need 10 sets over the course of a season, so that came to that price of 380,000 that we said that would cost the teams, right? So that was how much it was likely going to cost the teams to to run the Gen 2 Evo. And a lot of people say, man, that's such a small amount of money. A Formula 1 front wing doesn't even cost half of that. And I'm like, yes, but you have to remember that Formula E is still like very much a spec series, and the teams operate much smaller than Formula 1 teams. Like Formula 1 teams like Mercedes could have 600, 500 people. Like a Formula E team could have 60 people. So 380,000 for a team of 60 people compared to 600 is a lot more money. And obviously Formula E will get bigger. The teams will get bigger. And one day, I strongly believe Formula E will be at an F1 level, an F1 similar price level probably. But it's way too early in the day at this precise moment for Formula E to go spending $380,000 potentially on something that's only going to last for one season and isn't really going to benefit electric mobility as much, rather than more of a racing thing, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I was really sad that they were going to cancel it because I really love the look of the Gen 2 Evo car. But yeah, no, it does make sense given the whole pandemic that we're in. And yes, it's disappointing, but it was the correct decision. Unfortunately, but that's that at the end of the day. And yes, cost would not have been worth it. I think I did kind of mention on this show a few months ago saying that they should just do 2 Gen 2 Evo seasons starting in season 8 and just run it through season 9. But then again, that would just stop the development of the Gen 3 car as well. So yeah, it does make sense. But yeah, no, I was actually really surprised that people still thought that this was going on. I thought this was announced ages ago. I thought this was done and like in the locker. We all knew this. Evidently not. People just didn't realise, and so it was
kind of an open secret that it was like dead in the disco. I thought it didn't need a release. It didn't need any release because everyone knew that it just wasn't happening. But evidently not. People didn't actually know that this was happening, and the cost saving part of it makes sense, and so it's disappointing. But as Ed said, if there are any if there are any parts of the Gen 2 Evo that have actually been built, firstly I'd like to see it. Can they put it in their Can they put it in their Maybe I'll sell it on eBay. Don't worry.
No. They should build it, put it in their Donington HQ. And I think that's what they should do, so that people, because they've still got it there. The Donington HQ is still there. It's been there since day dot. Yes, the teams have moved out of there now, and there are a couple of teams still there, I think, and they've just grown into all the other teams' bases. But yeah, I think with the Gen 2 Evo, if there has been a car that has been built, because it was due to be released at the Geneva Motor Show, which was cancelled last minute. So it would make sense to stick it in the Donington HQ and then have people visit it every time they go to Donington.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I think it'll be good for people to see the car. Obviously, like the Gen 2 Evo, I remember showing it to the kids in my class, and just big from the look of the car, they went mental. It was the talk of the town. It was the talk of the school. It was the talk of the playground. Gen 2 Evo, Gen 2 Evo. Have you seen the Gen 2 Evo car? My kids really brought into it, and obviously I think that's what Formula E were trying to do, right? Was to create something that looked incredibly cool and would get the younger generation. And we're probably of the generation that, or the end of the generation that Formula E are trying to attract, right? But then when I saw it firsthand, just by showing a class of 30 kids, and how much a design like the Gen 2 Evo car can really encapsulate a young child and actually make them interested in a series that 5 minutes ago, before I'd even shown them that picture, didn't even know Formula E existed.
I think you're selling yourself a little short there, Jack, because you sold them a little bit on it as well with your passion and enthusiasm.
That's probably true, but at the same time, right? They had to see the car. Kids love visual things. They love visual things, and if Gen 3...
We do like visual things, yeah.
Yeah. If Gen 3... if Gen 3 can provide something that is as cool looking, futuristic looking, then I think, show that to the younger generation, make sure the younger generation can see it. they've got a good chance of gaining quite a lot of new fans. Right, boys, before we quickly wrap up, I posed a little thing and I just want to get your thoughts on it. Because we've all been watching Formula 1 now since the Formula E's finished. You know, we've got to whet our motorsport appetite and carry on watching motorsport, and Formula 1 is probably the only thing to do. And I was watching qualifying and I thought, could the Formula E system work in Formula 1? Or could you adapt it somehow? Could you maybe give Lewis Hamilton, goes out first in qualifying, only has one set of tyres, he's got one lap to do his lap. If he does it well, he does it well. If he does it wrong, he does it wrong. And then maybe you split up and maybe the people at the back, give the Williams 2 sets of tyres or 3 sets of tyres. And they've got more chance to, on a rubbered-in track, to maybe get a fast lap and see if you can mix up the F1 grid. Could it work? Do you think, Jack, that the Formula E qualifying system could potentially work in Formula 1?
Short answer, no. But I think there are kind of parts that kind of can. So the fact that the qualifying sessions are so short, I really like that. So if they made a Q4, Q5, Q6 and had like 3 drivers like knocked out in each session, and but the pressure to like get out on track and to get out on track, set your laps early, try and not get hold up any traffic, that would make it interesting. But the main idea that I've kind of thought would improve F1 qualifying, as we're just talking about it, British touring cars, they have success ballast. Now, obviously, you can't do that to a Formula 1 car, that's stupid. But I think that there should be a qualifying fuel ballast, so the person at the top of the table has to start qualifying with like 40 kilos of fuel, and then like the entirety of the top 10 gets like slightly less and less and less and less and less, and they have to wear off that fuel, because it will make the end of the sessions a bit more interesting, because the guys right at the front of the field will have to set a fantastic lap to maybe try and like squeeze through into the second part of qualifying. It wouldn't do much in terms of like changing up the grid, but I think it would do a fair amount in terms of, I think it make qualifying really exciting. You see more on track action. It won't be that much less economical, and yeah, it has the potential to spice up the grids. So that's what I did for me.
Very much like how it was in the olden days when they had race fuels for the final qualifying, and they had to burn off the race fuel.
Yes, but as you go further down the field,
they had less fuel. So person in P10 might have nearly qualifying fuel, whereas Hamilton has to start on
P1
race
starts
fuel.
on like 40 kilos or something.
Could work. But Ed, what do you think? Could the FE qualifying system work in Formula 1, or how do you think it could be adapted to possibly spice up maybe Formula 1?
Well, the thing that really makes the FE system work is the whole track evolution thing, and you do get this a little bit in Formula 1. Often I feel not quite to the same extent, where sometimes if you leave your running right to the end of the session, you'll even if you're in one of the slower cars, you'll be able to set a blisteringly quick lap time because there's so much more grip on the circuit. I really like the 1 lap qualifying system of Formula E, and it's something that Formula 1 used to do as well. Used to have a system about 20 years ago where they would send all the cars out sort of one at a time. They'd get one chance to do their lap. They'd sometimes go out in like reverse championship order. They'd do 1 lap and that would be it. And that would sometimes lead to some really interesting qualifying results if you go back to like 2003 or so. But I don't know. I still think if you put it in wholesale, I don't think it's a one-to. I don't think it would quite work, because it's it's adapted the format for street circuits, so that you don't have too many cars running on track at the same time and stuff like that as well, which is not as big an issue in F1. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. There are some good things that work, but mostly I think it's an FE exclusive system.
I think it could. I honestly think, I beg to differ. I feel like it could work, but I think Jack's probably onto something with the lap times in terms of the actual time of the session. I think if you make it, maybe have a few more sessions, but maybe make Q1 5 minutes or make Q1 7 minutes, 8 minutes instead of 18 minutes, so they don't have to do like 10 laps before and they get the track sort of evolved and stuff, and then everyone's fine, because maybe you're all fighting to be the last one on the track, and maybe there is that track evolution, and whoever gets it right could improve it. So maybe it could be adapted in that way. But boys, I want to say a massive thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jack.
And if you're really enjoying the content, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. We've got a Discord chat as well, so if you love Formula E, Formula 1, IndyCar, whatever, come join our Discord because we'd love to talk about it just as much as you like to talk about it. We also have a Twitch channel, so if you haven't seen us on Twitch, we do plenty of stuff, plenty of F1 racing, plenty of R Factor 2 stuff on Formula E and stuff like that. We'll also be doing a little co-op championship today as a little Pico birthday stream because it's his birthday tomorrow.
Hello.
But he's out tomorrow, so we're going
Yes.
to do a mini birthday stream today. A bit of a co-op on F1 2020 between me and Jack. See who can get out on top. Probably Jack. But which one?
Happy birthday, Pico, by the way.
Yes, happy birthday for tomorrow.
Thank you.
And if you love us that much, you can also support us on our Patreon page. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you very soon. Goodbye.